You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. Turkish shelling and airstrikes kill at least 35 Syrians, activists are saying, in the first significant civilian casualties in Turkey's campaign. Security sources are saying Turkish warplanes and artillery are striking targets held by the Kurdish militia in northern Syria. And France's burkini controversy threatens to set the tone for the country's presidential campaign, with Nicolas Sarkozy versus Alain Juppé. Good afternoon to all our viewers who are tuning in. MP Nawaf al-Moussaoui, an outspoken member of Hezbollah's Loyalty to Resistance bloc, is urging future movement's people to end what he calls the policy of deprivation against the Free Patriotic Movement, the group of Michel Aoun. He is warning that the persecution of the Free Patriotic Movement is equivalent to the persecution of all Christians. Moussaoui is alleging that in the absence of firmness from the Future Movement's international bosses and decisiveness from the movement's regional leadership, a conflict over who should be the next premier is erupting between the enemy brothers in this movement. Lebanon, however, he says, does not have the time to continue observing the chapters of conflict between enemies, and therefore the problem is not in their side, but rather inside the Future Movement. Turkish shelling and airstrikes killed at least 35 Syrians, activists are saying, in the first significant civilian casualties in Turkey's intensifying campaign in northern Syria. The bombardments come after Ankara suffered its first military fatality since it launched the two-pronged offensive against ISIS and Syrian Kurdish militia inside Syria on Wednesday. At least 20 civilians were killed and 50 wounded in Turkish artillery fire and airstrikes on the village of Jebel Kusa in early Sunday. Now, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights are saying that another 15 were killed and 25 wounded, many seriously, in Turkish airstrikes near the town of Al-Amadni. So it goes on that security sources are saying Turkish warplanes and artillery are striking targets held by the Kurdish militia in northern Syria, as Turkey is pressing on with a cross-border campaign launched last week with its Syrian rebel allies. There was no immediate comment from the militia, but forces aligned with the Kurdish group say that no Kurdish militia has been in areas being targeted by Turkish troops. A witness in Karkamis, a town on the Turkish side of the border near Jarablus, heard jets overheard, followed by blasts nearby. Artillery shells exploded in the area, but it was not immediately clear who was firing or what the targets were. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says Turkish warplanes are striking areas north of Manbij, a city south of Jarablus, captured by Kurdish allied Syrian Democratic Forces this month in a U.S.-backed operation. And more news from Yemen, where warplanes from the Saudi-led coalition are striking a rebel convoy near a taxi stand in the central of the country, killing 7 civilians and 9 insurgents. Now, a military official says the airstrikes hit 3 vehicles belonging to the Houthi rebels near the Mafra Sharab junction outside the southwestern city of Taiz. Medical sources say hospitals in Taiz received the bodies of 7 civilians, while military sources say 9 rebels were killed and 14 wounded. The raid comes during sporadic clashes in the city between the Iran-backed rebels and forces loyal to President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi, who are supported by a Saudi-led coalition. Coming up next, one of the leading candidates to replace Ban Ki-moon is Antonio Guterres. We've got the nominees when we come back. Welcome back. You're watching the 1620 o'clock news here on Future Television. Former French president and presidential candidate Nicolas Sarkozy says he will uphold his bid to impose a nationwide ban on the full-body swimwear known as the burkini if elected back to the presidency in 2017, positioning himself as a strong defender of French values and tough on immigration. Sarkozy, who is a conservative, was president from 2007 to 2012 before losing an election to socialist François Hollande. He was welcomed by supporters on stage to the sound and cheers for applause. For months, he's lagged in opinion polls behind Alain Juppé, a mild-mannered, more centrist former prime minister who is his main rival for the November primaries that will choose a conservative candidate for the election. U.S. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump says he would seek to develop a tracking system to ensure illegal immigrants who overstay their visas are removed from the United States. Under fire for giving mixed messages on his signature issue, illegal immigration, Trump used a campaign speech in Des Moines to provide some fresh details.
Just yesterday, the cousin of NBA star Dwayne Wade, a great guy, Dwayne Wade, was the victim of a tragic shooting in Chicago. She was the mother of 4 and was killed while pushing her infant child in a stroller just walking down the street. Shot. It breaks all of our hearts to see it. It's horrible. It's horrible. And it's only getting worse. This shouldn't happen in our country. This shouldn't happen in America. So we send our thoughts and prayers to the family, and we also promise to fight for a much, much better tomorrow. Across Chicago, more than 2,700 have been shooting victims since January of this year. Think of it. 2,700 people have been shot since January. We cannot, as a society, tolerate this level of violence and suffering in our cities. Workers, do you know how much I built? Construction workers. On day 1, I'm going to begin swiftly removing criminal, illegal immigrants from this country, including removing the hundreds and thousands of criminal, illegal immigrants that have been released into the United States and United States communities under the incompetent Obama-Clinton administration. We don't have now. We're going to build a great wall on the border, and we're going to institute nationwide E-Verify, stop illegal immigrants from accessing welfare and entitlements, and develop an exit entry, and you know what that is, exit entry system to ensure those who overstay their visas that they're quickly removed. We don't enforce our visa expiration dates, then we have open borders and we have nothing but crime. It's going to end.
NBC is reporting that Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton received a security briefing from U.S. intelligence officials. Clinton, a former Secretary of State, was scheduled to receive the briefing, an overview of foreign policy and international security issues facing the U.S. from career officials in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Briefing was given to Clinton at the Federal Bureau of Investigation's field office in White Plains, New York. The source said that because Trump asked for his briefing to be broken up into more than one session, he is expected to meet again with intelligence briefers. Questions have been raised about the extent to which either candidate should be trusted with national security secrets, given the controversy surrounding the private email server Clinton used and Trump's penchant for spontaneous comments and tweets. Indonesian police are investigating a suspected terror attack by a knife-wielding assailant on a priest during the service at a church, and a bomb squad had been deployed to determine whether the attacker's backpack contained explosives. There were no serious casualties, though the priest and his attackers suffered minor ones. Head of the church, Benner Ginting, recounted what happened, saying the backpack was the suspect carrying was on fire and he was not someone known in the church. The director of the Common Crime Department said that from the initial investigations, they have information that someone attempted to murder the priest, but only managed to injure his hand, and he was apprehended by churchgoers. The suspect pretended to be a churchgoer himself as he tried to explode something, but it only gave off smoke and fire. The UN Security Council is to hold secret ballots on Monday until a consensus is reached on a candidate to replace UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon of South Korea, who steps down at the end of this year after serving 2 5-year terms. The 15-member council cast a ballot for each of the 10 candidates, and the choice is encourage, discourage, or no opinion. One of the leading candidates for the top UN job is António Guterres, Portugal's most internationally renowned politician who has tackled crises from East Timor in the 90s to the present-day migrant crisis in Europe. The Council aims to recommend a candidate to the 193-member General Assembly for election by October. Guterres will be competing with 9 prominent international politicians to become the 9th UN chief. Now, because of the informal regional rotation scheme, many analysts say there is a good chance that the next UN chief will come from Eastern Europe, as that region has never produced a Secretary General or a woman. Finally, an Iranian refugee held at an Australian-funded detention center in Papua New Guinea is winning a political cartooning award for his work depicting life inside the camp. Ali, a 25-year-old whose pen name is Eaten Fish, has chronicled his 3-year detention on Manus Island as he struggles with obsessive-compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and debilitating panic attacks. Cartoonist Rights Network International said Ali was recognized for his courage in documenting life under Australia's offshore detention program. Ali's Australian-based advocate said the award meant a lot to the young cartoonist, whose work has been published in The Guardian newspaper. And on that note, we end our bulletin for today. Let me remind you of our headlines. Turkish shelling and airstrike kill at least 35 Syrians, activists say, the first significant civilian casualties in Turkey's intensifying campaign. Security forces say Turkish warplanes and artillery are striking targets held by the Kurdish militia in northern Syria. And France's Burkini controversy threatens to set the tone for the country's presidential campaign, pitting Nicolas Sarkozy and Alain Juppé. Those are your Sunday headlines live on Future Television. Serge Berberi is next. Stay tuned.